Hey, thanks for joining me today. My name's Chris. If you never tuned in before, I talk a lot of fantasy football, dynasty leagues, best ball leagues, and the NFL. I love football. If you love football, I'm the guy for you. Like, subscribe, and tune in for more fantasy football content. Anyways, today I wanted to talk about Derrick Henry and whether or not he can repeat that monster season he had in 2020. We all know the old myth, a running back who has 350 plus carries the previous year is doomed to fail in future seasons. So I wanted to take a closer look at that and evaluate if that is true. So what I did is I put a list together of 18 running backs over the last 25 years, that all the running backs that I could think of that had those kind of seasons, and whether or not they went on the following year or following years to have really good seasons. So let's start off here and let's look at Shaun Alexander, who had those two monster seasons for Seattle. And notate his age. He was 27 and 28, which is important because Derrick Henry is one of the oldest. He is the oldest running back out of all the elite running backs going into 2021 at 27 years old. Okay, so anyways, Shaun Alexander had two back-to-back seasons with 350 carries. So the 2004 season, he was able to better with an 1,800-yard season the next year. So that's one that shows us it can happen. Then we also remember DeMarco Murray, and a lot of Eagles fans know that situation well because we heard only from the media, oh, you're doomed after the 350 plus carries the prior year. But I will say a lot of the problems DeMarco Murray had in Philly were, in my opinion, with Chip Kelly's system, which was more suited for a guy like LaShawn McCoy, who he got rid of. So I really didn't feel like it was a fit. I thought DeMarco Murray could still play. I think he had like 800 yards that season. But they were running him out of the shotgun a lot. And DeMarco Murray was used to running it under center. That's how the Cowboys used him the prior year. So really, to me, that was a scheme fit. And the fact that DeMarco Murray went on in 2016 and had over 1,200 yards shows you that he still had something left in the tank. Now, let's go to Eddie George. He had two seasons with 350 plus carries. One of them was followed up with a 1,294-yard season, 1,300 yards, right? And then 2000, he had over 400 carries. Didn't follow that season up with 1,000 plus yards, but he did in 2003 and 2004 have over 1,000-yard seasons. So that, again, it shows you he had something left in the tank. Tiki Barber, he followed up at 1,800 yards with a 1,600-yard season. Jerome Bennis, he did it twice. 1,100 yards one year and then 1,000 yards the next. Terrell Davis followed 1,750 yards up with 2,000 yards. And then after that 2,000-yard season, he had concussion issues and never really looked the same. Amon Green followed it at 1,800-yard season up with 1,100 yards. Edgerrin James, he was a workhorse. He followed it up twice, and then one season he didn't. Arian Foster, no, he didn't, but in 2014 he had over 1,200 yards again. Stephen Davis, no, but he followed up 2002 with 1,400 yards. So again, just because they don't have a good year the next year also doesn't mean that they're not going to go out and have a good one in the future. So let's go Larry Johnson. No, he didn't. He never had a 1,000-yard season again. So he's one for the nose. Rudy Johnson, yes, he followed it up with another 1,400-yard season. Jamal Lewis, 2003, followed it up with 1,000 yards. Chris Johnson, 2009, had a nice 1,300-yard season. LaDainian Tomlinson, he had 1,645 yards after that season. Adrian Peterson followed it up with 1,300 yards. Ricky Williams followed it up once with 1,300 yards. And then 2003, he didn't, but he did come out of retirement, and eventually in 2009, he had a 1,100-plus yard season. And then Michael Turner, he had that monster year, 1,699 yards. He did not follow it up that next year with 1,000 yards, but he still had two 1,300-plus yard seasons after that. So he still had a lot left in the tank. So conclusions, right? 15 of those seasons, 60% of the time, were followed up with 1,000-plus yards. That's important. 9 of those seasons, 36%, were followed up with 1,300-plus yards. Very important. Only 2 of the seasons that were not followed up with the 1,000-yard season, only 2 of those seasons were never followed up with a 1,000-yard season again. The other 8, they went on and had future seasons with 1,000-plus yards. So the conclusion is the 350-plus carries myth is just that. It's a myth. Running backs can come back and have another big-time year. Now, I think you have to look at all the factors into that player. Injuries. How much usage has he had before that season? So if there's a lot of tread on the tires, then he has that kind of season. Okay, maybe it's not worth the risk. Maybe you think 350 carries, he might not have a lot left after that. So I took a closer look at Derrick Henry. I wanted to compare him to Zeke Elliott. They were both drafted in 2016. So they're both going into their 6 years. But as you can see, Zeke Elliott right out the gate had a lot more usage than Derrick Henry's first 3 years. Derrick Henry never went over 215 carries in his first 3 years. First year, he only had 110 carries. That's not a lot. So Henry, over their 5-year career, Henry is 2 years older, yet has 231 less rushing attempts than Zeke Elliott. And if you count receptions, Henry has 396 less touches than Zeke Elliott. So he pretty much has a whole year less of usage than Zeke Elliott. So to me, that tells me Derrick Henry still has a lot of tread left on the tire. Now, we don't know what's going to happen. It could be that Derrick Henry comes out, has injuries, doesn't repeat this year, and then next year, after that, he comes back and he rebounds. Or he may come out and ball out this year again. So on what to do with Derrick Henry depends on your situation. So if you're a dynasty league and you have Derrick Henry and you're contending this year, to me, I go back to the 60%. There's a 60% chance he's going to have over 1,000 yards this season. Tennessee loves to run the ball. So there's no reason to think they're not going to ride this workhorse next year. So I think he's primed to have another big season. Now, I do not believe he'll have 2,000 yards. I believe it'll be closer to 1,300 to 1,500 yard season. Why do I say that? It's just so hard to repeat 2,000 yards in one season. I don't see that happening again next year. So you should understand that. But a 1,500 yard season, 1,400 yards, 1,300 is still a good season for a running back. He's still going to be valuable. He can still help you win a championship. So if you're a contender this year in your dynasty team or your redraft league, yes, I would ride with Derrick Henry again. Now, if you have a dynasty league and you're looking at your team and you're like, I'm a year or two away from competing for a championship, I would sell Derrick Henry because he's not going to have 2,000 yards again. His value will probably go down a little bit. Let's say he has 1,500 yards. He'll still be valuable, but it'll go down a little bit. Now, if he doesn't have a 1,000-yard season and he comes out with 800 yards, his value is really probably gone down like 60, 70% of the time, percent of the value. So the point is, you have to be honest about where your team's at. If you're competing, yes, you need elite running backs to win. Ride with Derrick Henry. If you're not competing, I would cash in right now and get what you can for the future, because he is 27 years old. I would guess he has 2-3 years most of big football left. So it really depends where you're at in your fantasy league. But there's no reason to think that Derrick Henry can't come out in 2021 and have another big season. But there is a risk involved. And the one thing with dynasty leagues, if you're doing a dynasty league, is you always want to sell a guy before he loses his value. Because then you will just keep having value year in, year out on your team. And the way teams get bad really quick in dynasty leagues is they keep guys too long. And so you really need to know where you're at. If you're competing for a championship, you go for it. You need elite type players to win, especially elite running backs. You cannot win a fantasy league without at least one elite running back. It's really difficult to do. So if you're a Derrick Henry owner, ride with him. Enjoy the season. I don't think it's over for him. I still think he has a lot left in the tank. His first 3 years were very light on him, and I don't see why he can't come out and have another good season. Don't expect 2,000 yards again. That's not realistic. I don't think he'll ever have 2,000 yards again. I think that was his best season ever. But, look at his 2019 season. Maybe that's something he could come out and have again. That's kind of what I'm looking at as a projection for Derrick Henry in 2021. So anyways, I hope this was valuable to you. Please please subscribe, and I look forward to doing this again in the future. Thanks, guys.